like give that voice, like to show other people, like, you know, just because we're first generation, just because we're Latinos, we, you know, we're seen as minorities, doesn't mean we can't be up there. They're like, you have 48 hours because the program starts in 3 weeks. Even if there's one person that can look up to me and be like, you know what, like be inspired, I know that that's good enough for me.
Attention, code trauma.
Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for tuning in to Allied Health Mentors. My name's Eddie, and today I'm sitting here with Lupita Gaytan. Did I say it right?
Yes.
I nailed it. All right. With Lupita. If you haven't checked this out before, we are Allied Health Mentors, where we talk about allied health careers, professions, opportunities, programs, schooling, things like that. We just like to highlight allied health professionals and what they do and what they contribute to the healthcare field. So for that reason, I'm sitting here with Lupita. Lupita is actually a longtime friend, an old friend. We actually grew up kind of across the street from each other because her parents are my grandmother's neighbors. So we've kind of grown up together through the years and kept in touch. And now Lupita is embarking on a journey to become an occupational therapist. So she is currently in an occupational therapy program, not here in the state of California. She's actually in a school in Nevada, but we're going to get more into that. We're going to let Lupita introduce herself and kind of share her experience. So Lupita, occupational therapy, you're in an occupational therapy program. What's that like? Where are you going to school? Tell me about your first year.
So I currently attend Touro University Nevada. There's a couple Touro universities, but mine is located in Nevada, which is really cool. It was like a sudden move, actually, my first year. I'm 2/3 of the way done for my first year, which is, you know, the first 2 semesters are the toughest. Mm-hmm. So they really challenge you and, you know, they'll basically rebuild you into a new person. But I love it. I love learning more about what we do. And, you know, it kind of just has reiterated like to myself why I want to do this, you know, being able to help people and, you know, just seeing that satisfaction or like that look in their eyes when they're able to do something independently, like that just makes it so much better. And learning that, you know, there's so much we can do. Like I've even learned new settings that we can be in, as well as like other settings that are slowly coming up. Like, you know, right now, the oncology setting is really big where we're starting to kind of pop in more. So, you know, just it's constantly learning, you know, there's pediatrics, there's adults, there's older adults. We just finished our pediatric semester. So we learned a lot about kids and, you know, I'm not going to lie, I see kids now and I'm analyzing them. Like it's so hard not to analyze people and, you know, like posture wise behaviors, like, okay, like, so you're constantly seeing everything. And I've even tried to correct some of the stuff that I've done, like even with sitting, sometimes I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be sitting like that.
Now I'm self-conscious.
And my dad hates it now because, yeah, no, you're fine. My dad hates it though, because, you know, he has some back problems and I try to correct them. And I'm like, this is why you have certain pains, like because you're doing this or that. But, you know, ultimately, like the field is very rewarding. You know, there's so much. And it's just like, I love helping people. Obviously, like I barely learned about occupational therapy not that long ago. In fact, I want to say it was like maybe 4 years ago. And like I heard about it, but I didn't really know what it was. During my time at, I think it was Kaiser, I bumped into one and I was like, well, what is it that you do? Like, you know, what is the difference? Mm-hmm. And she started explaining like, you know, how they focus on the whole person versus just like, you know, certain areas. Like, for example, physical therapy is just more muscular. Mm-hmm. Occupational therapy focuses on occupation. And, you know, us as individuals, like, I don't know, for example, like you, Eddie, do you really think of when you're brushing your teeth or is it just kind of like you already know what you're doing?
It's all natural. Like, I think,
like,
I think I'm doing it right. I don't know.
Right. But like, you know, there's people out there that, you know, they have to learn and we have to break it down like step by step, because for them, like they might not know how to do it. And then we have to adapt and modify. And, you know, like if they can't hold the brush a certain way, like we get creative. So it's like, you're always finding new ways. So definitely. After like kind of looking into that and researching, I just fell in love with it.
Well, that's awesome. You know, I love to hear your enthusiasm. And the reason why I asked you to do this interview today is because you're a student, right? And I've
Yeah.
done a couple other students, but I love the enthusiasm that you have as a student and the journey that you're taking, because I do want to follow up and I want to compare, where you are today to where you're going to be in the next couple of years when you get that certification and you become an occupational therapist. So I think that's awesome that you're sharing this with us. But just to backtrack a little bit, before you even got into this program, you had mentioned Kaiser, you had mentioned shadowing, and you also went to Mount St. Mary's College here in Los Angeles. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit about your undergrad experience and the volunteer experience that you did to help you get into a program like that.
Yeah, so for Mount St. Mary's, like I said, I originally wanted to do physical therapy. So I started off as a biology major. And, obviously, like, I've always loved science, but for some reason, me and biology were not getting along so well. So, I, in that process, I had to do research because I was in a program called STEM. So, part of that program, we had to do research with a certain professor, depending on what they did. And I came across this professor who did a lot of brain research, specifically like with learning and memory. And, she has a neuroscience PhD and everything. So I was like, okay, that seems interesting. So I did her research. I fell in love with the brain. And I was like, oh my God, like the human brain is just awesome. So it was actually her that she was just like, she knew my struggles. And she's just like, you love the brain a lot. You love how it works. Why don't you just do psychology? And I was like, well, I want to do physical therapy, And she's just like, you can do physical therapy even with the psychology major, It doesn't matter what you major in as long as you have those prereqs. And she was also the one that noticed. She's like, I see that, psychology fits you more. And it's like, you understand it easier and it's not much of a struggle. So she's just like, I really think you would benefit from it. So, I looked into it and I was like, okay, like, cool. And eventually I switched over my second year. I did take some outside classes at like COC to kind of stay on track, which I did.
COC is a community college in our area. So just in case anyone was confused, but continue, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So, I graduated on time. And during my last year, I think, of college, I started volunteering at places and, obviously with physical therapy in mind still. I volunteered at Kaiser, which is a hospital. I did their physical therapy inpatient and outpatient settings, which it was really hard to get into inpatient. It's easier to get into outpatient. So, and that's where I met an occupational therapist in the inpatient setting. And, we had conversations and that's where she explained everything. And going back to outpatient, like I had a lot of physical therapists tell me like, yeah, if I could do this all over again, I would do occupational therapy. So that kind of like made me realize like, well, why? And that's where I began to do my research, because I also volunteered at a private clinic outside for physical therapy and I did learn a lot. But, it's just, that was still sitting in the back of my mind, like, well, what is it? What is it? So I did my research and I read more on it and I was like, well, you know what? I'm a psychology major. Like all these psychology courses cover all the prereqs to get into grad school for this. Like, and it involves doing a lot of psychology within it. So I was like, we do a lot of stuff that physical therapy does, but we incorporate psychology as well. So that kind of just, brought it all together. I graduated. I got my bachelor's in psychology. And then I got a job as an ABA, which is a behavior therapist. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. And in doing so, I was kind of already doing some occupational therapy because I was working with kids that had like disabilities or, autism and stuff like that, or ADHD. And I had to find ways to, help them become independent themselves, which is what occupational therapy does. So, I was like, I enjoy it. I love it. And this is something I really could see myself doing in the long run. So that's kind of how I stumbled on OT.
Awesome. I think that's great. And something I wanted to point in on is that you said you had met in occupational therapy while you were doing this volunteer program with Kaiser. And I think that's great because I tell people all the time, you never know what you're going to have an interest in. And I think the medical field in general, just volunteering in a hospital, opens so many doors, right? Because you can be walking down the hall and you're passing a cardiologist or a sonographer or a phlebotomist, or, occupational therapist. And if you just read their name tag and you ask that question and just say, hey, I was just wondering, what is it that you do? Do you have a minute? Could you maybe just tell me where you went to school, something like that? And I think people in the allied health field or in the medical field really appreciate when someone who's aspiring to be a professional or an allied professional takes interest in what they do. And then they're going to give you those little tidbits that you're going to take on with you. And then eventually it snowballs and becomes a career like it did for you. I think that's great.
Exactly.
Getting into grad school, how hard is that? Did you have to take the GRE? Was this the only program you applied to? Like, what was that experience like?
So I honestly was trying to avoid the GRE at first because, I know I'm a bad test taker. And I was like,
I don't blame you.
Like, I remember taking the SAT and I was like, no. So I was trying to avoid the GRE at all costs. But I have this mentor, from Mount St. Mary's, and, she's been through it. She got her master's already in public health. And right now she's in med school at UC Davis. She's going to become a physician.
Wow.
And she was in my ear, like, because I told her, I was like, look, I'm going to apply to the schools that don't require the GRE because I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to spend money and blah, blah, blah. And she was just like, okay, like, that's good. She's like, but if you do the GRE, you can get scholarships for that too. And so I was like, it's like when you hear that, like, you don't want to hear it, but it's true. And so I was like, okay, like, I guess. So me and one of my best friends, actually, who was also in grad school, we're like, okay, well, we'll study for the GRE. So we bought like a prep course. We were studying together like every weekend, the math and everything. And I took the GRE. I hated it. I was like, oh my God, like I can't, But just being able to take it, it felt kind of good because I was just like, okay, well, I'm still going to apply to schools that don't require it. But there's other schools that still do. For example, USC. I did apply to USC as well, and they required it. So it's just like, okay, well, I took it, and I have that kind of just as kind of like a safety, in case of anything. I applied to a total of 5 schools. Most of them are here in California, and obviously Touro University in Nevada, which is where I'm at now, which is actually like, I found that school way later, and I was like, okay, like, let me just apply. So,
You mentioned you had applied to a lot of schools here in California, but you decided to venture out and go to Nevada. What advice would you give to someone who's applying to programs? Because I think a lot of people coming out of college, people in their 20s and in their early 20s, they're looking at grad schools and they're like, man, I don't want to leave. I just got out of 4 years of college. I want to spend time with family. What would you tell them about looking at schools outside of their area? Do you think they'd have a better chance of getting in? Do you think it's better for your personal development and growth? What's your opinion on that?
I would first say, like, I took a break before applying. I had a couple years because I know I needed that mentally and stuff. But I would really say, like, depending on what you kind of want to do, look at the school's values, like, because all the schools have like a mission statement, core values, and see if that kind of aligns with you, because you don't want to apply to somewhere and it's just like, I don't really like what they're about. And then, like, let's say you do get in and you do go, you're just going to be uncomfortable the whole time. So, the schools that I did apply to, I researched them. I looked up YouTube videos, I spoke with, some people, like, for example, admissions counselors and everything. And if I was able to kind of like talk to other people that have kind of gone through that program or process, like, I wanted to see what it was like. And the schools that I ended up choosing, I was like, you know what, this aligns with what I believe. I think I would be comfortable here because, it is a commitment. It's a 3-year program. Like mine, it's a 3-year program.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I'm going to be there for a while. So I want to be comfortable. Same with like the professors and everything. Like, I think it's really important kind of getting a feel of what the program is. Some of the web pages actually have like a description. There's Facebook pages, and, you can really see what it's like. So I think that's kind of like what I would say do, as well as, be sure that that's kind of what you want to do. It's kind of going back to the volunteering, because once you apply to grad school, like, you're kind of like, well, this is what I really want to do. And that's going to be a big commitment. So obviously don't give up though, you know, look at your different options. If you don't want to leave, try to find the ones that are near you. I kind of did want to go on a new adventure. So that's why I kind of was like, okay, well, Nevada's kind of far from where I am, but it's kind of close to like, if I wanted to come home and visit, like I can still come home and visit.
Definitely. So when you found out you got in, what was that like? Were you nervous? Were you relieved? Like when you got in, what emotions were you going through?
Oh man. Okay. So when it's actually like, I went to my interview in March, which is actually coming up. It's going to be a year in March.
Okay.
And everything just happened so fast. So I got my interview. I felt it went great. You know, it didn't feel like an interview. It felt like a welcome, you know? And so I got an email, like, I think it was a couple of days later or whatever. And they're like, oh, you know, you've been waitlisted. And so I just kind of kept it in the bag. You know, I was still doing other school interviews, other school applications on the side because I was just like, well, I didn't get in. And so they emailed me, I think it was like in June, because they started their program in July. And so they emailed me one day and they're like, oh, like just reaching out. Are you still interested in being on the wait list? And I was like, well, yeah, like, you know, I was like, sure, why not? You know, I still hadn't gotten in anywhere else. And they're like, okay, cool. And then the next day I get this email and they're like, oh, congratulations, you've been accepted. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like I was in shock. I was like, I got into grad school, like, you know, I cried because it was very emotional, like, you know, just seeing all my hard work kind of pay off. You know, it was just like a lot of emotions. I was just like, oh my God, like this, like, it's my first time I got in, because I met people at my interviews and there was this one girl who, you know, we're really good friends now. And she's like, this was her third time applying.
Oh.
And I was like, I got in on the first shot. Like, you know, like not everyone can do that, you know, but I was kind of already okay with not getting in on the first round because I was just like, I'm new to all of this. Like the only person I had kind of guiding me was my mentor, you know, but I don't have an older sibling that can be like, okay, well, this is what you do, you know? Same thing in my family. Like no one in my family has gone to grad school. You know, I'm the first one. So it's just kind of figuring out on my own. So I was just like, oh my God, like, you know, I felt the pressure. And then, you know, they, on top of that, they told me, okay, well, you have 48 hours to decide if you're coming or not, which usually once you get into grad school, they give you 2 weeks to decide, you know, but because I was on the wait list, you know, and some people didn't, like that had gotten accepted, didn't go, you know, they're like, you have 48 hours because the program starts in 3 weeks. So, you know, before that, we had to do an orientation and it's just like, okay, you know, and you have to pay a seat deposit if you accept. And it's just like, I think it was like $500 or something. So it's just like, it was a lot to handle, but, you know, I kind of like, I talked about it with my dad and, you know, I knew I was still on the wait list and everything. And I was like, well, you know what, like, it's either I take it or I wait for the other ones, you know, that I've applied to, or, you know, like the other wait list, because I could get called back, but I'm not sure. I could get in somewhere else, but I'm not sure. I was like, but this one's already offering me an opportunity. So I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not looking back, I'm taking it. And sure enough, like, I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to Nevada.
There you go.
And I literally had like, I think it was like 3 weeks to find a place to live, you know, pay everything, order my books, you know, like kind of catch up to everybody who had already been accepted back like March, April, even May, who still had more time versus me that I was just like, okay, you know. But then later on, I found out someone else got accepted like a week after me. So I was just like, okay, like that must have been even more stressful. But, you know, I enjoyed it. Luckily, I had people to help me. Like, I had one of my friends that I met at the interview, and she was, like, helping me find a place. So that's how we ended up at the same place, you know, where I'm at now. And, you know, I was just blessed. Like, I had a lot of people helping me. And they're like, okay, what do you need? Like, even the school itself was like, yes, you got accepted late, but, you know, we're here to help you. So I really enjoyed that.
That's great. Wow, I didn't know it went down like that. Like, I know I follow your story, and I think
Yeah.
I had seen that you're applying to places. I follow you on Instagram. I follow your story on Instagram, and I had seen you had applied places, and I saw you got accepted. So I've kind of just been keeping track. Not that I'm like observing you all the time, but like you come up on my stories, and I see, like, I saw when you were at orientation, and then I saw when you started your class and you met your friends, and now you're doing study groups. So it's really cool to see your journey, and it's great to hear how it
Yeah.
started. The program itself, occupational therapy, if you can give us like kind of a brief overview of what that entails, what are the responsibilities that you will have as occupational therapists? What can people expect going into this type of program?
So patience, a lot of patience, definitely. Um, it's something we've definitely learned from our professors, reiterate it all the time. You can have a plan of what you're going to be doing with the patient. It's not always going to go that way. So you got to be prepared for anything to be thrown at you, and, you know, work on the fly, be creative, because ultimately that's what we do, you know? Like, let's say one day we're working with a patient and we're working on like hand stabilization, you know, and you're like, okay, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, because obviously you have to plan beforehand. And then, you know, maybe the patient doesn't want to do that. Maybe they're in a bad mood, you know, so you have to kind of be like, okay, well, how am I going to switch this? How am I going to engage them? With kids especially, kids will try to like control the whole thing and not let you take control. But definitely going into the program, also like being in the program, just having like a good support system, I would say, because, you know, like I said, there is going to be times where you're just going to feel like you're not going to be able to get through it. Like, other responsibilities as an OT, you know, being able to communicate well, because you're going to be communicating not just with the patients, you know, we work a lot with other professionals as well, like physical therapists, physicians, you know, we work with speech language pathologists. So, you know, we work as a team, and, you know, being able to have that good communication and good like team building, you know, being able to work in groups is really, really big. And also with families, because, you know, we focus on the individual, like as a person, but, you know, the families as well, because that's their support system, regardless if you're working with a child, an adult, or even an older adult. Like, there's going to be some sort of guardian or, you know, family involved. So just kind of being able to build that rapport, and, you know, always kind of taking into consideration their beliefs, you know, culturally wise, like religion, and kind of just giving your insight of why they should do certain things or why you recommend certain things, and being able to kind of find that like midpoint or that mid ground.
Awesome. So what will you then have at the end of this program? So when you finish this program, what will your degree be? What will your certification be? Is there any type of testing you have to do nationally or regionally after this? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so after the 3 years, you know, we do a capstone at the end. After that, once we graduate, we pass all of that. I'll be an occupational therapy doctorate, or OTD. That's
Okay.
what we're called, or Doctor of Occupational Therapy.
Oh, wow.
But there is licensing after that. So, you know, you can have your doctorate, but that doesn't mean you can practice just yet. So you do have to take board exams. We go through NBCOT. That's our certification. And once you take that exam and you pass, we call it your R. So you'll see a lot of like, you know, the initial that's OTR/L, meaning you're a registered occupational therapist and you're licensed.
Okay.
And then on top of that, you know, we always do continuing education courses. So we call it CEUs. And, you know, once you do, you know, you have your license, you still kind of have to be on that. So there's a lot of great classes that are being offered through our website. It's called AOTA, the American Occupational Therapy Association. Definitely, you guys can always check it out. I am subscribed to it, you know, simply because I am a student. It's also part of our, you know, requirements for school, but they have a lot of great resources of basically everything, like legislation, new techniques, new, you know, stuff that's coming out all the time. And when I can, I try to share stuff because I have an OT page as well on Instagram, which I can talk about later as well. But you just kind of have to keep doing that. Obviously, the quickest way to lose your licensing, anything unethical. So definitely, like any other profession, you know, we do take an oath and we kind of have to follow that as well. But, you know, as long as you're doing everything okay, you know, you're documenting everything, there's no reason you should lose your license unless, you know, you're really risking it or you're really looking for that.
Right.
But just doing continuing education. We also have experiences that we called field work. So I'll be doing my level 2 field works hopefully next year around this time. So I'll be working under an occupational therapist, and for them that counts as their, like, you know, credits too, to kind of be able to keep their license active.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I was about to ask, what kind of practical experience will you get in school? Are they going to send you to like certain I guess hospitals or facilities, or do you like, I guess what kind of exposure, what kind of exposure will you get?
So originally we have level 1 fieldworks, and then we have level 2A and level 2B. So this last semester, we were supposed to be on our level 1 fieldworks, obviously, but, you know, because of COVID, everything was kind of a little bit difficult. So we had to do it very virtual. And usually it's within the pediatric setting first. So you basically would go to a pediatric clinic and you would kind of just be observing for your first level 1 fieldwork. You have some of the knowledge of what you're looking at. So it's not like you're just going in there and being like, oh, the kids are playing, you know? Because if you really look at it, like, if you don't really know what OT is, like, you're just going to be like, well, these kids are just playing. Like, they're throwing balls, they're zip lining, they're climbing a rock, you know, like, but when you're in the OT, you know, you kind of see like, oh, they're working on body mobility, they're working on balance, they're working on core strength. So that's why they send us that for the first one. For the second one, we basically get to choose different areas that we want to do. It can be anything from hand therapy, because there is a specialization in hand therapy. It can be traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, acute rehab facilities, outpatient rehab. It can be, oh man, there's like, you could do another pediatric rotation if you want. It could be at a hospital setting. You could do it at a private clinic. So there's just so many options. So you kind of just, we call it a wish list that you put together of what you want to do. And we do have fieldwork coordinators that will match it up with you. So they'll try to do their best to kind of match with what you want to do, because there's 2 rotations of 12 weeks. So you're basically working an 8 to 5 job, those 12 weeks, Monday through Friday. And, you know, by that time, you are basically going to have your own patients, and you're going to be observing, doing evals, doing, you know, their whole intervention, writing notes, you know, what is working, what is not working, what you need to change, and all of that. But you're still under the supervision of an OT. But it's like, at that point, they're kind of just really wanting to see what you've learned, how you can deal with it. And, you know, they're there to help you, but it's like, you know, they're trying to push you, and they're like, this is what you're going to be doing. So it's kind of what I'm looking forward to. My wish list consists a lot of traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and hands. So that's kind of like what I'm interested in right now.
Wow, that's awesome. Something that you mentioned a little while ago, and something that I wanted to highlight, is that you are a first generation Mexican American, Chicana. Your parents are both very hardworking. I personally know your parents. Your dad has worked on my grandma's house, my mom's house, and your dad drives a very distinct truck that I've seen him around town, around San Fernando. You know, just, I don't know what he's doing. He's probably out there working, but very, very hard workers. How important was it for you? Did you have a lot of weight on your shoulders to kind of, you know, work hard and live up to the expectations of your parents? Or do you feel like you're doing it for the culture, you're doing it for future generations of Latinos to see someone, you know, excel and succeed in this career field?
So my parents have been a big, like, inspiration, you know, like you said, they are very hardworking people. I admire them so much because they've done so much. Like, you know, my dad's truck, it's funny because he's telling us, like, this is what's fed you, this is what put you to, like, through school and stuff.
That truck, he's had that truck forever since I was a kid.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I tell him, like, obviously my
It's a
goal
good
in the
truck.
future.
It's a good
Yeah,
truck.
I mean, it's done its job. My
Mhm.
goal in the future is obviously to get him a new truck
Mhm.
because I know he deserves it. He's worked so hard, so that's obviously my goal for him. But I wanted to do something where they could be proud of. Although they've always told me, like, whatever you want to do, as long as you're happy, we're gonna be happy and we're gonna be proud.
Mhm.
My dad's always been the type of person to be like, just keep going. Life is going to knock you down. Keep pushing, keep working hard. He
Mhm.
supports me 100%, which I'm totally blessed. Like, my dad is my rock. I still call him sometimes and I cry to him, which is funny. He's already used to it.
Mhm.
But, going more into it, like, I've realized that within our Latino communities, like, there's not a lot of us out there, like, within the healthcare field or even other fields. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, that's been something that I've been working so much recently. And I'm trying to partner up with this other, like, Instagram, like, Latina OT page
Mhm.
to kind of, like, give that voice, like, to show other people, like, just because we're first generation, just because we're Latinos, we're seen as minorities, doesn't mean we can't be up there. We can work as hard. We're hard workers, regardless of what people think, regardless of, what society or social media tries to portray. Like, we're smart, we work hard, and we can do exactly the same thing. And I feel like that's very important. And, even if there's one person that can look up to me and be like, you know what, like, be inspired, I know that that's good enough for me, because it's just like, I look up to my mentor and she's a Latina too. And I'm like, she's been able to do it. There's no reason why I can't do it, So just kind of showing, like, our younger generations that might be on the verge of, like, well, they're questioning it. Like, well, I don't know, because, where I come from, it's just like, no, like, if there's a will, there's a way. Yes, it's going to take a lot of hard work. Yes, it's going to take sacrifice. But if it's something you really want to do, like, you got to work for it and it will happen, like, you can get to that goal. And that's what I kind of want to work on doing more. And I love that you're doing this too, because, obviously we're both Latinos, and just showing people that we can do it. You're a phlebotomist and that's great. I know your mom's also in the medical field. So it's just like, it shows people, like, we can be there too, regardless of what career you choose. So
Definitely. I'm a phlebotomist. I don't have anywhere near the credentials that you will have in the near future, but just even on my level, working in largely Latino communities of Spanish speaking, individuals, I would take blood pressures and I would, draw blood on, Mexican Americans and other Latino nationalities. And a lot of times the patient education wasn't there. There's a
yeah.
lot of things that they have misconceptions of, or they get a lot of their information from TV. And even just being a phlebotomist, when I would try to explain to them why they should be taking their blood pressure medication, or why they need to have their blood drawn, or why the doctor has to draw their blood every week or something, just explaining it in Spanish, and not that I'm fluent, but in the very broken Spanglish that I have, it seemed to resonate and it seemed to make a difference. And so, you being that you're fluent in Spanish, what opportunities do you see for you to help, the large Latino community, especially in Nevada? I'm sure there's a big community of Latinos there.
Yeah.
What do you see there? Is there opportunities for you to help that population of people?
Yeah, definitely. I think anywhere, health education is very important. Like you said, there's a lot of misconceptions, and I think it's just because the way, like, everyone was raised. Like, I know some of my family members, they refuse to go to the doctor unless, like, they're dying, and it's just like, no, like, I think having us kind of be the ones to be like, this is important, this is why you need to do it, it kind of gives them that, like, okay, well, if they're telling me, I can believe someone that's kind of more like me than versus someone that's not. It kind of, like you said, resonates, because it's more of like a trust thing. So that's why I feel like it's very important. Like, us Latinos, like, we're educating ourselves, and we're not going to be giving you wrong information. We're not going to be trying to trick you. Like, we're trying to help our own people. Like, we're trying to show that, you know, we're also educated. We can also help each other out. We can help anybody out, you know? And I think like just working hard on that, because, you know, even in my family, like, it's funny because now, like, I've noticed that there's more people in my family that, because they know that I'm going to be like a doctor of occupational therapy, for them, it's more of like, oh, she's just going to be a doctor. So they think I'm going to be like a medical doctor, which is funny. And they'll try to ask me all these questions. I have some knowledge, but not like 100%. But, you know, I'll be like, oh, well, if this is kind of off, you should go to the doctor, you know, because they can give you a better, you know, diagnosis. And then now I see that they'll be like, oh, okay, like, I'll probably do that. Versus before, they're going to be like, oh, no, like, you know?
Yeah.
So
I remember this this lady, and just because you're bringing that up, I was taking patient history in you know, Panorama City in this little clinic, and this patient was diabetic, and I asked her, "Are you taking diabetic medication?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I'm taking this pill." In Spanish, she's like, "Oh, estoy tomando esas pastillas," you know. And I was like, "Oh, where'd you get them from?" And she's like, "Oh, you know, the store down the street, the herbal store." And so I look at it, and it's all in Spanish, right? Whatever pills she's taking, and I don't recognize the word, and so I Google it, and what she was taking was condensed pills of yucca. Is it a fruit? So that's all she was. It was just yucca, and yeah, I guess yucca can be good for diabetics sometimes, but that's not a medication. It's not metformin.
yeah.
It's not, you know, insulin. So yeah, and that's interesting, because you're gonna have that title of doctor. You know, they're gonna be coming to you for strep throats and broken bones and who knows what. So that's really interesting. That's awesome. Wow, that's a great point. I love that we brought that up, and I hope that inspires, you know, younger generations. And this is gonna be on YouTube for a while, so hopefully. What resources would you like to give out? Instagram pages, maybe YouTube videos, you know, channels, to future generations of OTs?
So definitely there's a lot of OT pages out there. You know, I found out as I started researching some, I follow a couple and they're great. I kind of started my own OT page to kind of
did you?
Highlight my journey. Yeah. So okay. I have my personal one and I try to do some, but I was like, let me just do, you know, an OT page.
Yeah.
If you guys want, I can definitely let you guys know. It's Latina_OTS, I believe.
Latina, so, is it? Check it right now. So like, oh, but you're on your phone.
Yes, let me check it so I can give you the right one.
I'm gonna put it in the right below you. Yeah. I'll put it there.
Yeah, so it's Latina_OTS. So that's my OT page. Awesome. I'm still, you know, kind of new to it all and stuff, but definitely, I try to like see what people want, like to kind of know more about. I share my OT experience, like my journey. Like I'll post videos of what we do in class, you know, it's fun, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we do that's fun, but I also try to show like the not so fun side, because I want to give like, you know, this is what's really happening, because I think a lot of people would be like, oh, they're just always playing, or they're always doing like the fun stuff, but it's like, no, like you have to show the other side too. Like,
I was gonna say, so like I follow your stories, and it seems like such a fun class. You guys are always on your feet, like you guys are always interacting with each other, and especially during the time of, you know, COVID, where I didn't think any in-person stuff was going on the college level. You guys are able to do that, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, obviously, you know, we try to take all the precautions with COVID.
And you're all wearing masks. I usually see you wearing masks.
Yeah, we all have our masks on. We recently just did a lab where we kind of had to present, because we just finished our neuro semester as well. So we kind of had to present like on a neurological topic. So we kind of had to simulate of what it would be like, which is really fun. We had a lot of fun. My group actually did ALS, and we talked about like what the symptoms are, what it feels like, what it affects, and all that stuff. And we actually had our classmates, you know, obviously the ice bucket challenge was going around a lot and everything and stuff, but we took it a little bit further. You know, we just didn't pour ice on them because that's very quick. So what we had them do, you know, we had them stick their hands in like ice buckets of water for like 2 minutes, you know, to give them that feeling, you know, what it felt like. And, you know, having them do like writing a letter or writing a check, because, you know, as older adults, you know, that's stuff that you do, you know, if you have to write a letter, if you have to balance your checkbook, which is an occupation. We had them do like ball toss and ball catch, because, you know, some of them play with their kids while their hands were like, you know, numb. And some of them were like, this feels crazy. Like some of them were like, I can't do this. Like they couldn't leave their hands in there for like, I think it was like 30 seconds. And they're like, like it's so painful.
Wow.
But it's just like, it kind of brought that awareness of like, people with ALS, that's not just on their hands, like that's their whole body,
Wow.
you know, and it's, you know, at any point in time, and it just gets worse. So that's kind of what we did. They had fun with it. They learned a lot, and they're like, wow, like, you know, it kind of makes you a little bit more conscious versus the whole ice bucket challenge where it's just all quick,
Yeah.
you know?
To be honest, that's the first time I've heard that explanation. I knew it had to deal with the ALS ice bucket challenge, but I didn't know that that's a way that you can simulate, you know, what it feels like. So that's really interesting.
So definitely. Wow. Our professor even got involved, you know, so that's like, our professors love getting involved, and, you know, it's really fun. So they make it fun. So, you know, I try to post stuff like that so people could see what we do, and also like certain, you know, disorders or, you know, injuries that happen. Like as Mexicans, I don't know if you ever, like when you see kids throwing a tantrum, the parent always pulls on their arm, you know?
Yeah.
That's technically bad for the kid.
I'm sure.
But, you know, people just think like, oh, you know, their shoulder's going to pop out. But it's like, no, like, you know, you can cause them damage to like their nerves, like on their elbow. So, you know, I try to post stuff like that to educate people too as well, and be like, you think it's not that bad, but this is what can actually happen, and they can be affected in the long run.
Just sana kulita rana. That's you know, and they're good.
Yeah, no, that's the typical, or vaporu, you know.
Vaporu. There you go. Awesome. Lupita, before I let you go, you've talked about having a support system and having a mentor. How important is that to you? And do you advise that everyone find someone to look up to and help them through it?
Yes, definitely. Obviously, you know, my support system, my parents, my brothers, like, you know, that's like my number one support system. But definitely a mentor. Like the school, like for my school, we are assigned a mentor, and, you know, that's great. But, you know, I've had my undergrad mentor for so long, although we're not in the same, like, you know, OT field. She's in the medical field, but just even then, like if you shadow, you know, talk to them, be like, hey, you know what, like I'm wondering if you can possibly be my mentor. A lot of the people will be like, sure, you know, definitely find someone that you could trust, because there will be a lot of questions that you're going to be like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, can you help me out? I shadowed a hand therapist too, and I actually keep in contact with her aide. And it's funny because she was teaching me in the clinic, like, you know, the hand therapy stuff. And she's actually wanting to apply to OT school now. And she's actually looking up to me now, which is funny. Yeah. But, you know, we keep a good relationship. And, you know, I tell her, I was like, you've taught me a lot, and definitely, like, I'll be your mentor too, you know, like, always keep an open mind, be helpful, because it's just like, I feel like that's how we're all going to better, you know, make the world a better place. And, you know, definitely look for someone who can inspire you. And, you know, don't be afraid. Like, you have to break out of that shell, because I was very shy, and now I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I'll ask all these questions if I have to. Go.
That's awesome. Do you have any ending remarks? Any last words or advice that you'd like to, you know, get out there and broadcast? No pressure.
Definitely don't give up. You know, I know a lot of people, if they hear no, they're kind of like, oh man, like, don't give up. Use that as a way to kind of be like, okay, reevaluate, like, what was I weak on? What can I strengthen? What could I do better? Come back stronger, you know, keep pushing. If it's really what you want to do, like I said, you know, you will get there. Si se puede, you know, that's definitely, I tell myself that all the time, like, you know, si se puede, si se puede. We're here to thrive. We're here to become better. We're here to educate our people. We're trying to help everybody. So don't give up. If you guys want to reach out to me, even if it's not OT related, definitely you guys can follow my OT page. I do my best to respond. Obviously, like, if I take a little bit longer, it's because I'm either studying or doing something, but definitely, like, I'm here to help people out. I'm a big mental health advocate too. So definitely mental health is very, very important. I have my own story on that can be definitely discussed later on. I am planning to do a project on that as well, but definitely, like, reach out, you know, you're not alone. There's people here that will help you. Don't feel alone. And there's so many resources now, like, it's unbelievable.
Wow. Well, Lupita, thank you very much for taking the time to, speak to me and speak to the viewers and give your insight and inspiration and your enthusiasm. This is awesome. This went way better than I could have envisioned before doing this
Yeah,
interview.
thank you. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. One more time, what is that OT Instagram that you have so I can put it again?
Yes. So my Instagram page is Latina_OTS. That's my Instagram page for my occupational therapy journey.
Awesome.
Definitely follow, and I'm going to be working on putting more content up soon.
Well, I'm going to go and follow that right now. Again, thank you, Lupita. Guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns about OT, go ahead and follow her. I'm going to follow her on there as well. Reach out to her. And if she doesn't reach out to you or she doesn't get back to you, she's probably studying. She's probably busy. So leave her alone.
Yeah, but I'll get back to you, I promise.
Eventually she'll get back to you. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This is Allied Health Mentors, where we talk about allied health careers, professions, opportunities, so that you can make the best choice in your future. So go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you, Lupita. Thank you, everyone out there for watching.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Take care.